This story begins with a mother's love. Along the journey, I'll share an African proverb, the wisdom of a psalm, the power of Google, and an unforgettable trip to Vegas. All in 12 minutes. Let's see if we can make it. My mother was one of 7 children. She grew up poor in inner city Baltimore, the eldest female child. 2 of her siblings were sight impaired, and their father passed when she was very young. This left her mother, my grandmother, to raise a family on what she could earn cleaning houses. They were cold, they knew hunger, and they struggled. And it didn't leave a lot of resources for my mother to go to college. And this was hard, because she was smart, confident, and ambitious. She was a great student and an athlete. But she saw how hard her mother worked, and she was determined to make these setbacks a setup for her comeback. She went on to put herself through secretary school, met my father, raised 3 kids, and eventually she graduated from college, cum laude, the same year that I did. My mother carried herself like royalty. And she did something for me and my siblings that was so simple, yet so remarkable that it continues to reverberate throughout my life. She gave us the gift of a mantra. When we were little, she would say it to us. As we grew with us, and eventually she taped it to the inside of the bathroom mirror as a daily reminder for us to say it to ourselves. And we did. We rolled our eyes when we did it as teenagers, but we did it. My mom looked at me as a little girl and she said, "Baby, repeat after me. I can do anything. I am smart, I am loved, and I can learn." And I believed her. So armed with a mother's love and the gift of her mantra, I dreamed big. I attended my dream school, UVA. I was admitted to a prestigious business program. I landed a job with a Fortune 100 company 2 years before I graduated with my master's degree. I traveled, married my high school sweetheart, and bought my first house. Mom was right. I could do anything. I was smart. I was loved, and I could learn. Then, in my late 20s, my marriage disintegrated. My heart ached so badly that first year, I thought that I would die. The second year, I hoped that I would die. But by the 3rd year, I realized I am not going to die. So how do I get up and get on with it? I still believed in my mother's mantra, but I didn't feel so smart. I certainly didn't feel the love, and I wasn't sure what I was supposed to learn. It was at this low point that I connected with the 23rd Psalm. You know the one. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, which is terrifying when you focus on the valley of the shadow of death. Who wants to go there? But when I stepped back and I focused on, yea, though I walk, I realized I wasn't supposed to pitch a tent. I wasn't supposed to set up shop here. I was supposed to keep it moving, 1 foot in front of the other. And I had been. Through those years of sorrow, I had been walking, and I was ready to come out of the valley. I could do anything. I was still smart. I was still loved, and I could still learn. I was curious and a bit of a nerd, so I decided to Google, what are the worst things that could happen to me? And I came across the work of 2 psychiatrists, Holmes and Ray. And in the 60s and 70s, they did a series of studies that linked illness to stress. And in 1967, they published a study that basically looked at 43 unique life stressors. And I've taken the liberty of boiling these down to what I like to call the 6 worst days of your life. They are the death of a spouse or loved one, divorce or separation, imprisonment, the change in personal health or personal injury, a change in financial state or loss of a job, and finally, the change in health of a loved one. And this actually helped me a lot for 3 reasons. The first was I realized that in 30 years, I'd only experienced one worst day of my life. And the second, it really hammered home that at any given moment in time, all of us are going into, going through, or coming out of something. And finally, I was incredibly comforted by the notion that there was literally nothing that could happen to me that a millennia of humanity hadn't already survived. It's what we do. There's an African proverb I love, and it says, when you're dancing with joy, sorrow lies asleep in the other room. Also potentially terrifying if you focus on the sorrow. But what it illuminated for me was that nothing lasts forever, good or bad. And I didn't want to just survive this worst thing that had happened to me. I wanted to thrive. I wanted this to be worth something. And so I left an impressive but uninspiring job and decided to pursue my true passions. I realized that I'm gay and had a great time bursting out of that closet. I traveled the world. I danced on tables in Hong Kong and watched the sunrise in Istanbul. I built a career on my superpowers. I started a business, and I began dating again. I was back and better than ever. My setback had been the setup for an epic comeback. And then 5 years ago, on vacation with friends in Vegas, I experienced what I now know to be common symptoms of colon cancer. Don't Google that. I was admitted to the local hospital where the attending told me it's probably just a polyp. Don't Google that either. A platelet transfusion and an emergency colonoscopy later, and I heard, I'm sorry, we don't have better news. We found a tumor. They asked me if I wanted to stay in Vegas for treatment, but I declined after an orderly told me that if she had gotten sick and fallen out in that hospital, that she would go somewhere else. And so, like many, I left Vegas confused, alone, wearing clothes that weren't mine, and owing somebody thousands of dollars. And I flew home to hear the words, "You have cancer." Stage 3B, to be exact. Now, I was sure that the 3 wasn't good, but I assumed that much like algebra, that if they were tossing the alphabet in the mix, this was not a good sign. I remember the quality of light, how still the room got, how quiet, and I freaked out. I ran laps around the exam room, wailing in fear and grief, until my doctor put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You can make it. We can beat this. I know how you're feeling. I'm a survivor too." And he pointed to the blue ribbon on his lapel. The year that followed was the worst year of my life. I woke up daily wondering if I was going to die. Too scared to Google the prognosis for my diagnosis. Radiation, chemo, 2 surgeries. The terror, and then the peace that comes with staring your own mortality in the face. And I realized eventually that I was lucky. I'd been on vacation with a friend who was also a cancer survivor. Lucky. On that same trip, a nurse who knew exactly what to do. Lucky. My surgeon was a survivor. Lucky. But taped inside the elevator doors at 5 a.m. on the morning of my first surgery, the 23rd Psalm. Divine. It seemed that even in this, the worst thing that had happened to me, there were signs that this setback could be a setup for a comeback. You know how the story goes. I'm still here, 4 years out from the worst year of my life. And I believe my purpose is to help those who will journey through the valley after me. And the power of perspective is that you win it, you earn it in battle. But once it's won, it only grows stronger. I had the honor of being with my mother when she heard the words, "You have cancer," not 18 months after she had nursed me through my final treatment. And to walk with her through the valley of the shadow of death, all the more capable for having traversed those same roads myself. But if she were here, she would tell us that she had had a blast. She danced on tables in Egypt and watched the sunrise in Morocco. And she will remind us that we're not supposed to get out of this thing called life alive. But we are meant to get through it together. And so I ask you to consider, in your darkest hours, when you are wrestling with that thing that you think you cannot survive, what if your setback could be the setup for your comeback? Thank you.